Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. As you know, we are participating in the Ready, Set, Launch Mindset Community's annual summit. And in today's session, we have the opportunity to talk to an entrepreneur's best friend, which I think is an accountant, or one of their best friends. I would say probably the best friend in reality. But we actually have Diane Garner here joining us today, who's a CPA. She's going to share a little bit of her background, but answer some questions that our community has about, what they can do to assist themselves get to a strong start as an entrepreneur regarding their taxes and their finances, as well as any pearls of wisdoms that she has to provide to us as well. So with that being stated, I'm going to ask Diamond to give us a little bit of a self-intro. I told her before I would try to do it, but I don't think I'd be that great at it. She's the expert about herself, so I'm going to let her shine the light on herself a little bit. So Diamond, tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, thank you for giving me this. I'm thankful to be here with everyone. And I've never been referred to as someone's best friend, entrepreneur's best friend. So I actually like that tagline. So thank you for that, Roderick.
No problem.
So as Roderick has said, my name is Diamond Garner. I am a licensed certified public accountant, or CPA for short, in Illinois. I'm the founder of Shine Bright CPA firm, and I started out in accounting at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. So I have my bachelor's from there and also a master's degree. My master's has a concentration in taxation. So after graduating from SIU, I started my career in Chicago working for Deloitte, which is one of the second largest accounting firm in the US, and it has the largest tax practice in Chicago. I worked in public accounting for 7 years before I decided to start my own business. I felt that it was very important for me to give back to the community and teach our community about tax law and financial literacy. So I currently work in my business, helping individuals and small business owners, teaching them strategic tax planning, as well as leading financial wellness workshops.
Fantastic. Thank you, Diamond. Sounds like you stayed pretty busy.
I try to keep it.
That's a good thing. I like entrepreneurs to stay busy. That's what it's all about. So, Diamond, this is a interview for an entrepreneur community within our summit. And so just want to get an idea. You're an entrepreneur, so I always like to understand, the background of entrepreneurs. So when did you know that entrepreneurship was the right path for you?
So I didn't, at first I was like so confused about if I wanted to be, people were like, oh, you can start your own tax practice, you can do this. And I was just like, so like in corporate America, making good money, having a good salary. So like I was very hesitant. But I also got burnt out in corporate America. Like in public accounting is very fast paced. You work in 60 to 70 hours around this time in tax season. So I knew that I needed to make a shift or a change. So when I left corporate America, I was like, can I do this on my own? So I questioned myself a lot. But I would say when I knew entrepreneurship was for me was when I did a full year being an entrepreneur and I was able to maintain my same level of lifestyle. No bills were behind, my bills were getting paid on time. I knew like, okay, I can make my money on my own terms, and be fine. And I don't need a job to do it. So I think that's when I was just like, yes, entrepreneurship is for me, when I figured out like I can actually do it. So I would say a year and a half with actually being on that journey of entrepreneurship, like the full year of entrepreneurship. I was like, okay, I can do this.
All right, fantastic. So let me ask you this. So was it one day you walked into work and you were like, this is it, I'm done, I'm starting my own business? When was that day? When did you get the idea like, that's it, I'm doing it?
The last firm that I was with, I wasn't there. Like I was physically there, but mentally I wasn't there. So like when we discussed like us going our separate ways, I was just okay with it because I think I was just burnt out at that point. And when you get like burnt out and don't care about your job and you're just there for a check, it's like it's time to make a transition in your life. And I think I was at that point.
Okay, fantastic. Well, yeah, I definitely understand that. There's a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to, is that watershed moment where they're like, you know what, today is the day. But obviously, a lot of times you can't walk out immediately on that day.
Right.
unless you're big and bad, like some people I do know who actually walked out
Yeah.
that day, but that wasn't me. I didn't
No,
have
it
to like
wasn't me
that.
either. It wasn't me either, but I know like you just kind of feel it like something needs to change or I need to have some type of breakthrough because this is not really where I want to be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, sharing your background, your story with us. So let's get into your expertise. And so the first question that I have for you that's going to benefit our community here will be, what are the most common questions you get from small business owners? Regarding from as being an accountant, I'm sure you get a lot of great questions, but what are some of the ones you tend to get on a regular basis?
So I think the reason I get on a regular basis or a lot of entrepreneur and small business owners don't understand is like structure of their business, right? So if I tell you, hey, Roderick, what's an LLC to you? What does that mean?
A bunch of initials, but I know what it is. But but limited liability corporation. But outside of that, right? What else does I don't know much.
Yeah, so like outside of that, that's what most people say because everybody wants to hear the LLC, but they don't really understand. Okay. So like you have something that's called a legal structure and how that structure is taxed. So a LLC can be taxed 4 different ways. So that's important for a business owner, right? Because all of those ways have different tax consequences or tax liabilities that you have, right? So if you're an LLC, let's take a step back. That is a limited liability company, but it is administered by the state that you live in or by the state that it's organized in, right? So it's Illinois issues that certification to you to be an LLC. So outside of that, the IRS sees a limited liability company a few different ways. First, if it's only you, that is taxed as disregarded entity, right? So you have limited legal liability for an LLC, but as a tax, that's going to be reported on your 1040 on a Schedule C, for example. So if you and a partner go into an LLC together and you're both members at the time of you creating your LLC, then that goes on a partnership return. And outside of that, you also can make an election to be taxed as an S corp, or you can make an election to be taxed as a corporation. And that's just one legal structure, right? So
Right.
that's the big legal structure that everybody wants to. So that's the one I like to like kind of clarify that. So, but outside of that legal structure, you have a sole proprietorship, right? So that's just somebody, let's just say I wanted to start a business today and I start collecting money. I haven't really organized anything. I have all of the liability on me as the person and the sole proprietorship, right? Most of the time that might not be the best way, right? Because we want some legal protection. A sole proprietorship is not going to get you that protection. And you also have a partnership. You can have a general partnership, a limited partnership, or a limited personal, like personal business, or like for accountants, we have LLPs. Let's see, who else would it be? A lawyer, attorneys, doctors, they can be in a structure of an LLP. And you also have corporations, right? So those are legal structures. That is not always the same as a tax structure, right? So like if you're a sole proprietor, that's going to be reported on your individual 1040, right? But if you're a partnership or if you're in business with more than one person, then that's going to be reported on a partnership tax return, which is a 1065. And then you have an S corp election that can be made. So this is an election that you're a corporation, but you're taxed as a flow through. So what a flow through entity is you get taxed at the individual level, right? So the corporation does not pay the tax liability. The individual pays it who owns the corporation, which is different. And then you have a corporation that gets what? Double taxation, right? Because the corporation pays taxes at a corporate level. And then whenever you withdraw money as you get dividends, you have to pay taxes at an individual level. So these are like very important things, right? Because the legal structure and how you tax your business, that's going to stay with you for a very long time. So if you don't do it right when you first start a business, this can be a headache, right? Because then you have to terminate the business and start over again. So I think that is like something that I think we need to understand better as entrepreneurs, or talk to somebody to kind of understand, where do I fall? What makes sense for my business, right? Because I've discussed all these, but S Corp has some good benefits, right? Because all these structures that I talked about, if you're an LLC, if you're a disregarded entity or a partnership, you're not able to pay yourself wages, right? So when you withdraw money from that corporation or your business, it's called a draw, okay? So ownership draw. Whereas if you're a corporation and taxed as an S Corp, if you're an LLC taxed as an S Corp, if you make the election, the owners can be paid a wage from their business, which can be a good benefit to them. And it also can help them with their tax liability at the end of the year. So yeah, it's some mechanics that you have to put in place, right? You have to set up payroll. You have to do a business return. So you have to look and see, like, is my business making enough money for me to incur these additional expenses? But in the long term, it may be a very good option for somebody that is going to be in business for a while.
Wow, well, that's a lot of good information. We could probably talk about structure of businesses for a whole hour in itself. But I'm sure there's some other things that you get questions about. So I think structure is big, but are there any other things that people approach you about as well?
Yeah, I would say tracking their expenses, startup costs, or kind of understanding that. So for a business, you as an entrepreneur, you want to make sure that your business is separate from you as an individual. So what that means to me is, like, you're not commingling funds, right? You have a separate business account where you are paying all the expenses, and whatever income you're making from the business is going into that account. So you have in a business account. You're not putting everything in your personal account. So what I see a lot for my small business owners, especially in the first few years of business or the first year, they are using their personal account for business expenses. They're using their personal credit card. It's really no decipher of, like, what's business, what's personal. I've literally had to sit and decide, like, go through bank statements for clients because they're just so confused, because they didn't have anything separate. So the first thing with starting your business, make sure you have a separate account. Now for a business account, you have to have certain things in place to get a business account. But even if you don't have those things in place, I highly suggest you to get a separate checking account that you just run business income and expenses through. And when you want to pay yourself, you make sure that you take a withdrawal. So you actually write yourself a check, or you withdraw the money into your personal account. So just because you got paid, maybe you got a big order today, for instance, and you're like, oh, I want to go to dinner with friends, but you haven't actually transferred money to your personal account. People will be like, oh, I'll just swipe my business card. That's what I do not suggest the client does. I suggest that you go and take a withdrawal out of the account. You write yourself a check. You do a Zelle pay, or you PayPal yourself personally from the business, so you can have a track record, so you know actually how much money you're withdrawing from your business. And like, if something happens, if you were to get sued or something, they can clearly see that it's a difference, right, between your personal assets and the business assets.
That's great information. Yeah, I can definitely understand why that's important. I have almost caught myself doing that myself. Um, but question, you mentioned about opening a business account. What things do you actually have to open that business account?
Yeah, so to open a business account, you're going to need your articles of organization. So if you're LLC, you'll need the articles of organization, and you also will need your EIN number. No one will let you open a business account without those two things. And some of them even ask for operating agreements, but at the bare minimum, you're going to need your articles of organization or incorporation and your EIN number to open that account.
So if you're a sole proprietor without a business structure, you're saying you're a sole proprietor, you just can't go in and say, hey, I want to open a business account.
No, they're not going to let you. If it's not like a legal structure, they won't let you. I mean,
Okay.
you can get a personal account, but even if you're a sole proprietor, I do highly suggest that you get an EIN number to do business. So when you are conducting business as a sole proprietor, you're not providing everybody your social security number. It'll give you some protection that you wouldn't have, right? Because say you do work for a government entity or a school or a college, they may ask you to fill out a W-9 form. And you should use your EIN for that form and not your social security number when you're conducting business.
That's some great tips. I truly appreciate that. And let's move on to the next question. That was a lot of great information. Thank you, Diamond.
No.
And you may have already touched on this, but outside of the two things that you've already shared with us, what is your biggest tip you would give an aspiring entrepreneur about managing their money? So somebody saying, hey, I'm about to start a business and I'm about to get this thing rolling. What would you say for them to think about before they get this whole thing started from a money
I would
standpoint?
say, in my like when I talk about business, my first thing is like let's discuss budgeting, right? Because most of us are bootstrapping our businesses. The money
Yes.
that we're making from outside sources, that money is going to fund the business. So I think budgeting is going to be important, right? Because you want to make sure your living expenses are covered. You want to make sure you have money to fuel your business. So make a budget and stick with the budget will be my first thing. And then you need to reinvest in your business, okay? To scale it, right? To and grow it. So I say like 10 to 30%. You should save and reinvest back into the business. So let's say if you're selling something for $100, you should be putting $30 back into your business every sale, right? Because that's going to accumulate because you want the business to be like be able to support itself. So you're not continually dumping money into the business. So that's going to be important. And that also will help you with taxes, right? So if we're saving, let's say we're saving 30% of what we're making. When you do get a tax bill, if you have taxes due, you have like a nest egg to make it, like to pay those taxes. Because I see a lot of times entrepreneurs and small business owners, they get all the money and they just spend it. So you might have very well made $150,000 during the year, but you have zero savings at the end of the year. And now you could have a $5,000 tax bill. And that's from last year, right? Now we're in a new year and you're doing the same thing. So that can snowball into so much debt very fast that you definitely need to save for those things and to support the business.
That's great. Yeah. I think people forget that. A lot of entrepreneurs forget, especially the first year or two, that they have to actually pay taxes. Um,
Mhm.
there's always a question about, well, hey, what does that matter if I'm not going to be making any money that first year or that second year? Why would I have to worry about paying taxes? Is that how would you
So, I
respond
mean,
to that?
that's true. So, like, if you're not making money, so you're saying that you're going to be at a loss. So, if you're at a loss, you're not going to have a tax liability. But even, I mean, let's just say, like, you make a profit of $10,000 or $20,000 in a business in profit, you still going to have a tax liability. And I mean, to be honest, you might not even have an income tax liability, but you'll have a self-employment tax liability from that money. So that could easily be $3,000. $3,000 or $4,000 in self-employment taxes because you're like, the income, the standard deduction is $12,000 now. So if I've only made 10,000, like I don't owe anybody anything, right?
Right.
But a lot of entrepreneurs forget about self-employment taxes. So if you're getting taxed on your Schedule C, so the Schedule C is the profit and loss statement for an individual. If you're reporting information on that form and you have a profit, that automatically triggers a self-employment tax liability. And the same thing if you're structured in a partnership. So
Okay.
if those two structures, it's possible, it's very possible that you don't have an income tax liability, but you have a self-employment tax liability.
So basically, I basically hear you saying, hey, if you plan to make money or not, you need to have a budget in place because you could still end up with tax liability regardless. So it's better just to start out on the right foot and do things the right way at the beginning with your taxes and your
Yeah,
money.
no, for sure, because it can add up. So like I talked about one thing, another thing about the S Corp is you don't pay self-employment taxes because the idea is that you're going to put yourself on a salary and you're going to pay payroll taxes. But if most people don't even know about an S Corp, right, or never did the election or don't know anything about that. So we're typically structured as a sole proprietorship or a disregarded entity or a partnership if it's me and a friend that's in business together. So in those structures, you definitely need to think about that because self-employment tax can be very high, like 15%.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Very insightful. I appreciate that. Other question I have here is, can you share a time when you helped a business owner out of a situation they probably shouldn't have gotten themselves into?
Yeah, so I deal with a lot of truck drivers, like independent contractor truck drivers that own their own trucks. So I have one client particularly. So he went to someone else and he allowed them to do their tax return. And so he had this large tax bill. I believe it was like $20,000 in taxes that he owed when they did the return. So he was this was his first year being like an owner operator. So he was like kind of worried about what was going on. He wanted to see like, is it a possibility for me to amend this return or what can I do to save some taxes? So I took a look at what his previous accountant had did on his tax return, kind of did a detailed, thorough look. And we did end up amending the return, but I was able to save him about $8,000 on that tax bill. So he was like so happy. But I mean, we walked through it. I just made sure I took my time, made sure we were getting all the deductions that he qualified for. Um, and you see things that other tax preparers do, like, oh, you should have took this, or why didn't they do this, or your preparer didn't ask you about this. So I was able to get him some more deductions. So he was like very happy, and he's like been my client ever since.
I would have been happy too for $8,000.
Yeah,
That's a lot of vacation, a lot of clothes.
right.
That's a lot of good stuff. Big TV, whole lot of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he's not your best friend. See, remember I told you, entrepreneur's best friend is an accountant.
yes.
See, there we go. Another example. Another example. Well, that's great. I'm sure that you probably have a lot more of those as well. But again, it's just another reason why all entrepreneurs should definitely have an accountant in their life in some format. I know there's a lot of programs out there that you can plug and chug and put information in, but it's different when you can actually sit down and have a conversation and be able to speak specifically to what that individual is going through and to give them that insight. So with that being the case, I have a couple questions from our community regarding some tax questions or financial questions they may have had. So the first one, let's see here, is okay. One of the members asked, what address would I put down as my principal place of business if I am subcontracting, really subleasing space in someone else's business? What would be the process if I decided to change locations in the future from that address? So this person is leasing space somewhere else, and they want to, I guess, create maybe an LLC, and they're trying to figure out what address they should use for the address for the LLC.
So I mean, I would say be able to use that address for the business address. So that doesn't necessarily have to be the same address as the member of the owner of the business and also the registered agent. So when you organize your LLC, for instance, it's going to ask you for the principal place of the business. It's going to ask you for the member's address and also the registered agent. So the registered agent is the person that's going to get all of the documentation for the business. So that's the address that you want to make sure that it's correct, because that's where the Secretary of State is going to provide all of, all of your annual filings. If somebody subpoenas you, that's where it's going to go. So long as they have a registered agent address, that will be okay. That can receive mail, that's open in regular business hours. I think that should be fine.
Okay. So for clarity, they should use the business address where they are as far as the location.
Yes, I would say use the business where they are as far as the location, especially if they're leasing. I mean, some people obviously have work from home, right, or have home-based businesses and they have to use their home. But if you have a location that you're leasing, I would say that you can use that location. Maybe you don't want mail to be sent there, and you can specify that. So they can specify that when the articles of organization, and also to the IRS, because some people don't want their business mail going to the physical location of the business. So they can specify and say, I have a different mailing address, and make that mailing address their home address or whatever address they want their mail to go to.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that clarification. Next question we have from a member is, what is the best structure for an event production company that hires independent contractors as needed? So I think this member does big events and they hire people to help with the events. And so I'm assuming they might have some liability issues, like I guess if something falls or somebody gets hurt at their event. So they're trying to figure out what would be the best structure. Would it be an LLC, a corporation? What are your thoughts there from a liability standpoint?
My thoughts from a liability perspective on that is I would do an LLC. I would elect LLC at the state level, right? And then I will make an election to be taxed as an S corp, because you can pay them 1099, but if you're hosting large events, I'm assuming that you're going to have a lot of profit, right? So they say the threshold of like when you should consider an S corp versus of like a partnership or a SOPA or disregarded entity is about $30,000 in profit for the business. That's pretty much like the break-even point of when you should consider it. So I would say make an election, be an LLC that makes the election to be taxed as an S corp. So then you can put yourself on wages, and you also can have those independent contractors 1099. So any business structure, you can have contracted workers. But if they're looking to, down the line, pay their salary, I consider them going with the S corp election.
Okay. Would that change if the person is more of a subcontractor to the event? Let's say that they're not putting on the event, but they are designed to put together some type of design for the event, and they're hiring subcontractors. Would that change the setup any?
I mean, if I'm wondering how it's going to look, no, it wouldn't. But whoever is hiring them to be a subcontractor, they wouldn't put on there their subcontracting, Bob Jones for the work. So Bob has an S corp, he has a business. They should be contracting Bob Event Planning S corp or Event Planning LLC, and that's what they should be paying the funds to, right? And then they'll to Bob. So if I'm understanding correctly, then it shouldn't change any of that. It shouldn't be an issue. They would just have to make sure that every event they're subcontracting for, they have the business on file. So if they're going to give you a 1099 for the business, right, you should be giving all your business information and not your personal information.
Great. Thank you for that. Another question. When should entrepreneurs start thinking about hiring an accountant themselves?
Probably I think like when you start, it probably will be important to get an accountant that you can talk to, because it'll be easier on you, like from the start. So, I know some CPAs can be like very expensive, but I think that it would be a good investment for you to get one starting out, because then you won't go through a lot of headaches. So I have clients that've done it by themselves, and they were just overwhelmed when it came to like filing their taxes that year, right? Because they didn't really know what they were doing. So, they're having to sit here with me in my office for hours, going through all of their tax files because they just didn't have anything in place. They just didn't know. Like they just felt like, well, I'm going to save all these receipts, and that's going to, that's all I know. So it took us a very long time to get everything together. But he's like much better now, right? Because he understands what he needs to do. And he was like, I never want to sit here this long again to get my taxes done with you. And to me, it was fine, but to him, it's overwhelming, right? Because, most people don't want to sit in your office for hours going through all of their tax files and all of their documentation. So if you start talking to an accountant up front, they can at least give you some tips on what you should do so that won't happen.
Fantastic. Um, are there some accountants or CPAs that actually help entrepreneurs or small business owners get their business incorporated or the LLC or file the paperwork for them?
So I do that for clients. So I have like business consulting that I do, that I file the paperwork and talk to them through it, walk them through their options. We kind of see where they at. We search, online and make sure that that business name is one that is going to be accepted by Illinois. So I do it, and it's a lot of accountants and attorneys. So when it comes to like setting up the business, you can work with an accountant or attorney. Like I can do all the organization, but if you were a partnership or it was you and a few friends going in business together, I would honestly maybe even bring in an attorney or tell you to find an attorney, to do an operating agreement, because that's going to be very important if it's a multi-member LLC.
Right. So let me let me jump on to this question as well. A community member asked, when should they look to? But what is the latest? When is the latest that somebody should reach out to an accountant to get an accountant on board? We talked about when they should, but when is the latest? When is like you have to have somebody to do this for you?
I mean, I guess that's going to be like business and individual specifically, because some people will do it themselves, right? They'll keep their books. I have clients that's just like, you walk me through the QuickBooks and I'm going to do it. Just like set it up, and they'll do it their own. They'll run their payroll, and they'll do their own bookkeeping. So it just depends on their comfort level on where they are. But if you are going to keep good records, make sure you're keeping your receipts. Um, Tracking, I mean, if doing everything in one account, that would be helpful to an accountant and you. But I mean, I would say, as a business owner, maybe even by monthly, like reconciling and writing down your expenses and looking at the account, you probably should do it. Now, if you don't have a lot of activity, maybe you can do it quarterly, but at least looking at it a few times during the year. So at the end of the year, you're not overwhelmed. You know.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Truly appreciate that. I have a whole bunch of questions I could be asking you, but I know we have limited time with you
Yeah,
today.
you want to ask or
Uh, but there was one more I had, but yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. We might have to have you come back down the road and talk to us, but I also want to give the community an opportunity to reach out to you individually as well in case they want to connect with you. But with that being the case, I want to, before we wrap up today's conversation, want to give you an opportunity to share like any words of wisdom that you might have, for our community of entrepreneurs.
I would just say don't give up on yourself or your vision, right? Because it's a lot of people in this world that will support you. And the first people are probably not going to be your friends and family that's going to support you in this journey. But don't give up on yourself. Like, know whatever business, whatever idea, it can work. If you work at it, you be patient, you be diligent, you can be successful in it. Because I know the first couple of years can be very stressful for entrepreneurs, and they don't know and they don't have a lot of support. So definitely getting support outside of your friends and family, being in groups like you are here with Roderick and like-minded individual will take you a long way, because they're going to understand the journey that you're on that your family probably is not going to understand if you don't come from a background like myself of people starting their own business and entrepreneurs. So for me, this journey was like, what? Like, you're leaving corporate America? Why would you do that? Like, you went to school for this. You have all these degrees. You're licensed. Like, you should be in corporate America. They didn't really understand like why am I transitioning and why I want the desires. Now that I'm sustaining myself, it's looked at differently. But I didn't have that support when it first started.
Appreciate that. That is definitely wisdom. I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly. That community is important for entrepreneurs, and I encourage um, those who are in our community to continue to engage, and those who aren't necessarily who are watching this to consider joining a community, if not ours, so you have that support, because being an entrepreneur can be very lonely at times. So I definitely believe in that. So that's great wisdom. Um, Diamond, what's next for your business?
So what's next for my business is expanding. So I do tax prep, and I'm expanding now to a lot of bookkeeping and payroll services for my small business owner, because I just feel like it's a need for that. So I'm looking forward to that leg of my business, like really ramming up this year. And also like just running a client appreciation program right now for tax season. We're like almost there, right? So we're going to start filing, or individuals can start filing their returns on February 12th. So I'm already meeting with clients about that. And if you have a business return, you can be e-filing them now. So for my client appreciation program, I'm giving each client that files a tax return for me a $25 gift certificate, or for coming to me. And also, every client will be entered into a $100 drawing for filing with me. And I have a referral program. So every client you refer to me, I will put you in a drawing for $250.
Right. Accountants giving out money, that doesn't even sound right. I thought accountants saved money. It sounds like we found an accountant that's actually giving out money. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Like I appreciate my clients. So I appreciate referrals. It's very important. So it's important for me to give back and make sure that my clients understand that I appreciate them.
We're going to add your contact information and um, any other ways to contact you as we wrap up. But what's the best ways for people from our community to contact you? Diamond?
Yeah, you can contact me via email or text or call.
Okay, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I probably should have said this earlier. Name of your company?
It's Shine Bright CPA LLC.
All right, great. Email address?
So my email address is dgarner, DGARNER @shinebrightcpa.com.
Fantastic. And your website address?
So my website is diamondgarner.com. So that's DIAMOND Garner, GARNER.com.
Fantastic. Well, Diamond, I truly appreciate you joining the Ready, Set, Launch Mindset community for our first annual summit. I'm sure our community is definitely going to benefit from all the wisdom and pearls of information you dropped today. And I'm going to encourage them to also reach out to you directly if they want to follow up with you any additional questions that you shared. And also, I think I heard you say you're giving away some money for people in case different scenarios. And would love them to, particularly reach out to you to try to share in some of that money. Like I said, accountants are entrepreneurs' best friends. They help you save money, and Diamond is actually giving out money too. So it's a double win. So I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out to Diamond to learn more about her business and what Bright Shine does for their clients. All right. So with that being the case, thanks again, Diamond, for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And for everybody in our community. I look forward to connecting with you on our next workshop. Thanks. Have a good evening.